Hey, Joe here from Home Studio Corner. I want to talk quickly about multiband compression and what it sounds like. If you are afraid of multiband, it's probably with good cause, because you can completely ruin a mix or a mastering job if you go too heavy-handed on the multiband. But what is it used for and what does it do? Who is your father and what does he do? Well, I've got a multiband compressor pulled up here in front of me. Now, I'm going to play some samples through this. It is an unmixed song. It is just a part of my EP that I'm working on that is rough mixed at best. But it's a good way to show you what it is that multiband compression does. So, really quickly, I've covered this before, but I want to cover it again. Multiband compression, I've got this one divided into 3 bands, low, mid, and high, okay? You can see the cutoff frequencies here. It is essentially a group of compressors. In this instance, it's 3 different compressors that are each only listening to and compressing a set range of frequencies. As opposed to a normal compressor that listens to everything and compresses everything, a multiband is essentially 3 independent compressors operating independently, and it changes the way the compressor works. So there are lows that are being compressed differently than the mids, which are being compressed differently than the highs. Let me hit play for you and show you something really quickly. So I'll go in here and click solo, and you can hear each section of this particular multiband compressor and hear what frequencies are in each. So each of those bands has its own compressor. Now, the way that I set this up is the way Ian Shepherd taught me to do it years ago, and I have not strayed from it because Ian knows what he's talking about. I don't set anything different for each band. Each band, they're actually all grouped together, has the same ratio, same threshold, same attack, same release, and that way audio passes through it and it's compressing the different sections depending on how loud they are. So for something like this, that is an unmixed song, and just music in general is typically going to have a lot of mid-range. That's where the vocal is, that's where the guitars are, that's where the main instruments are, that's where the fundamental frequency of a lot of what we're listening to resides. So the middle makes sense that the mids would be the loudest section. So if that's the case, then the mids are going to be a little more compressed than the highs, and the bass, if it's a bass-heavy song, will probably have more compression than the highs as well. So it kind of goes most compression in the middle, less compression on the bottom, and probably even less compression on the top. Typically is the way it looks like it's working on stuff that I work on. But what does it sound like? So that's all well and good, and it's one thing to understand the concept of multiband compression, but what does it sound like? To me, it sounds like an easy, quick way to make things sound more polished. Now, I have to put a ginormous asterisk on this because there is never, ever a situation where a multiband compressor will save you from a bad mix. If you're not good at getting a balanced mix, at doing things like EQ and compression and static mix and all that stuff, multiband won't save you. But it's an interesting tool that can do a lot of things at once, which can be pretty helpful. So for this instance, I'll turn it off. This is bypassed. Here is just a rough mix of a song I'm working on. Okay, now I'm gonna click the multiband on before I tell you what to listen for, and tell me what you hear. Okay, I'll click when I turn this yellow switch off. This is the bypass button. When I turn it off, you're hearing the multiband compression. Okay, I'll turn it on and off a couple of times. Just listen to what's different. So here's what I hear, and then we'll do that again. I hear the mid-range being tamed a little bit. I hear more clarity, and I hear kind of a tightness, a cohesiveness to the whole deal. Specifically, if you listen to the high frequencies, they get a little bit clearer. If you listen to the low frequencies, they get a little bit tighter, and the mid-range are ducked down a little bit. It's kind of like without the multiband, it's kind of mid-rangey and kind of muffled sounding. With the multiband compressor, that mid-range is is tamed and it sounds a little more crisp. We got a little more low end, a little more top end, kind of that smiley face EQ curve, because the underlying mix is probably the frowny face EQ curve where there's a lot of mid-range. So this multiband is smacking down the mid-range and allowing the lows and highs to come through a little less compressed. And that gives us a tight sound. So specifically what I hear, listen to the vocal. The vocal's low in this mix because it's a scratch vocal. It's not the final vocal. It's kind of mixed, but it's low in the mix because I didn't want to really hear it super loud. Listen to how the vocal comes forward when we kick the multiband compressor on. We're not changing the mix. We're just addressing the stereo mix of the entire song. Listen to how the vocal comes forward and feels more clear just from this multiband, okay? That's what I want you to listen to. We'll start with the compressor off, and then I'll switch it on and off a couple of times. It's like somebody takes the blanket off the mix and things get a lot clearer. Now, am I advocating that you slap this on your mix bus and say, I don't have to mix anymore? Joe Gilder said I just have to put a multiband compressor and it'll do all the hard work for me. No, not at all. I'm not even suggesting you use this in your mixes. I just wanted you to hear what multiband sounds like, and maybe that'll be advantageous to you in the future if you have a particular mix that's giving you problems, or if you're doing any mastering work and you'd like to just tame the mid-range in general without having to pull the EQ of the mid-range down. This does it based on what's happening. So when the vocal is singing, there's a little more compression happening. But when there's no vocal, there's a little less compression happening. It's not a static thing. It's a constantly moving, fluid sort of thing. So don't be afraid of multiband compression. It can be a really useful tool. Even if you're just doing rough mixes, slap one on there. It'll make it sound a little tighter, a little bit better. And then you can, as you mess around with it when you're just working on songs, you can start to incorporate it into your final masters and maybe final mixes if you want to be crazy. And it might be one extra tool to have in your toolbox that maybe you've never tried out before. If you use Studio One Professional, for example, this particular plugin is included. I don't know how it sounds compared to some of the higher end stuff, different plugins out there. I'm sure there are better ones, but you get the idea. It does something to the audio, and that's pretty interesting to me. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that. Also, if you'd like to check out my 5-step mix guide, it's 100% free, and it walks you through my mixing process from start to finish. That'll help you get mixes faster and better. Go check it out at 5stepmix.com. Thanks for watching. See you later.